Hello, Hero Club, and welcome to another interview session. Today's interview is very special. We are talking to Melissa Flores, who is the current writer on Boom Studios' Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic, as well as Image Comics' The Dead Lucky, as well as Radiant Pink, and I believe also a Women of Marvel one shot that's coming out pretty soon.
Yeah, coming out next week.
hmm So we are happy to have her here to talk about working in comics, but also past experience in working in Power Rangers. And
hmm
we are excited to learn some more on this journey.
Oh yeah,
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
hmm
no problem.
So before we get to the interview questions, is there anything you would like to tell our audience about yourself, Melissa?
I don't know what they know. um, yeah, I'm Melissa. I was a executive for Power Rangers for about 10 years, and now I'm a writer, and I'm having a blast doing it. I don't know what else I could say that without context. So I'll just start with that, and we'll just move forward.
hmm
All right. So with our first question, what inspired you to get into the entertainment industry?
I've always been obsessed with stories, and I've always I was always a very imaginative child as a kid. Like my parents were never able to really punish me with anything but taking away my TV because at the time there was no like TiVo or DVR viewing on demand. So if I missed my Star Trek Voyager, I missed it completely until like reruns maybe in the summer. So that was really the only way you could actually get me to behave. Not that I was a bad kid, but like I didn't respond well to other types of punishment. I just think, like if you spank to me, that like a spanking takes 2 seconds, it's over. Like it's so it was one of those things where I was always obsessed with stories as a kid and adventure and Xena Warrior Princess and Star Trek and all these different kind of fantasy worlds were always like my big thing. I was obsessed with Michelle Yeoh movies and like action heroes and all this and like He-Man and like my sisters always wanted to play Barbies, but I wanted to go and like slay a dragon or like um I've always been obsessed with entertainment in one way or the other. I was a big nerd for books and then TV, and so I thought I was going to be a doctor or engineer, and I went to a lot of math and science schools and internship programs, and I had an internship with Nissan, and I did a bunch of different things, and then it just felt like I got too math and science out, and the other side of my brain just kind of exploded. And so when I went to college, I majored in communication and just kind of worked my way into the entertainment industry. And that felt like the right industry for me.
Very nice. So I'm gonna field the next question. So, how did you get your start in the industry, and what led you to join the Power Rangers brand?
So my industry journey was a little long. It's hard to get in there if you don't know anybody. And I was just, a kid from central Los Angeles. I didn't know anybody. So I started the way everybody starts. You start as a PA or a receptionist at
Mm.
some sort of production company, and you kind of hope you can work your way up. The problem with that is that you make so little money as an assistant or as a PA or as a receptionist that if you have a lot of college bills like I did, you can't really afford to stay there. And so I tried really hard. I actually ended up being an assistant at FX and again at HBO, which are great places to work. But I just couldn't afford to stay there. I was working 12 to 16 hours days. I was the first one in, the last one out, working really, really hard, making $500 a week. And I just could not afford to live on that. And a lot of times what happens is that you get that you you can live that way because your parents subsidize you. They know that you have to put in your dues, but my parents couldn't afford to subsidize me. I had to take, my parents were great. They got me through school, like they did everything they could, but I was an adult by that time. I had to take care of myself. I couldn't afford it. So I ended up just kind of giving up for a minute, and I was just like, I can't afford to do this. And I honestly didn't like being a TV executive. I didn't see myself wanting to do that. I wanted to be a lot more creative than that. And so I ended up actually quitting and just applying for an assistant position at a finance company because that work, easier work, less hours, 8 to 5, 5 times the pay, like a lot more money, um, much cushier job, and you only worked 40 hours a week, and then it was an easy job. I got to write in the middle of all that, so that's what I did, and it just so happened that that finance company was Saban Capital Group, owned by Mr. Haim Saban. And so I was with them for 3 years, and made a lot of really great connections there. And when I got bored after a while, and I was just like, it's time for me to try to get back into the entertainment industry. It's really hard to break in if you're out of it, and I need to start over again. And so I told my general counsel at the time, a really lovely, smart, incredible lady named Naveen, that I was thinking about leaving and trying to get back into the entertainment industry. And she said, we might actually have a position for you. And that just so happened, and I knew about this, it just so happened that they had just bought Power Rangers back from Disney and created a new company called Saban Brands with Power Rangers and Paul Frank. And the head of the production and distribution company, his name was Brian Casantini. I interviewed with him for a job in distribution, which is not production. Distribution is when they once you get the show and you get the tapes in, or the ProRes files, you have to distribute it to all the people that air it all over the world, and you have to make dubs, and you have to get all the translators and all that fun stuff. That's the distribution person. It's the person that coordinates where all of that goes and makes sure that you distribute the show to everybody. And you also the head of that department also makes the deal with Spain or France or whoever, and that's going to air those TV shows. That was originally the job I interviewed for, but thankfully Brian saw that I was a creative, and he created a new role for me as the coordinator in his department, production and development. And for about 6 months to a year, it was just me and him, just working our butts off. And then I just worked my way up. 10 years later, I was the director of Power Rangers content, and just busting my butt on everything Power Rangers. That's kind of how I fell into Power Rangers. But once I got to know the lore, and I really got to really get to know the brand, I really fell in love with it, and I really enjoyed what I was doing. I mean, I would have been there forever, honestly. I really loved what I was doing with Power Rangers.
Very nice.
So going alongside that, were you much of a fan of the series before working on it, or was it something that you picked up as working on it?
I was a little too old for Power Rangers when it first came out. That was my Saved by the Bell era. So I was just I remember seeing it. I remember being very aware of it, because how were you not aware of Power Rangers back then, right? And I remember thinking the people were very pretty in it, and it was a fun to watch, but I was just a little too old. And so I was one of those people that when I got hired on Saban Brands, I was one of those people like, oh wow, Power Rangers is still a thing. I can't believe they've still been around. And at the time we were restarting Samurai. And it was my job. The first job I was given was, you have to edit together a lore Bible for all 18 seasons of Power Rangers. And we wore a lot of hats back in those days, because we weren't a very big company. So it was also my job to go to the warehouse in Valencia, and go through all those costumes that were just delivered to us from Disney, and go through all of them and make sense of what all these different costumes were. So I had to learn very quickly, every season, everything, every color, what it all meant. In 6 months, I had the biggest Power Rangers boot camp in the world. And I made mistakes. There's still things that bug me. I remember the first licensing show, the first big licensing show that we had, that was for Megaforce. No, it was Samurai. It was Samurai. It was for Super Samurai. Was it for? I don't remember. It was for Megaforce or it was for Samurai. But the whole point was, we're gonna do a flash mob at the licensing event, and it was my job to put together those costumes. And so I had to literally find the belts, the boots, the gauntlets, the gloves, the helmets, and we tried to put together as many as we could. I remember a lot of these had been sitting in boxes since they were used. So for 10, 15 years, they smelled. They were a little stinky. But I had to put together complete outfits, and I had help for sure. There was other people that came in and helped.
Oh, yeah.
The majority of it was me in a warehouse in Valencia, putting this stuff together. And And I thought I knew what I was doing, but I remember like it still like bugs me. I don't know if it's still up there, but there's a YouTube video and it just bugs the crap out of me. The red Mystic Force costume. For some reason, we did not have the red Mystic Force helmet, and I didn't realize this at the time, but it was the pink Mystic Force helmet painted red. And that's what we used. And I don't know why that happened, and I don't know who used like, but I remember like that we thought we had the complete costume, and then I saw it later. I was like, oh, that's the wrong helmet. So like that little stuff like that like bugs me. But yeah, it was great. I learned a lot. I fell in love with it. And once I got to the core of what Power Rangers was, which was the diversity and the teamwork, I'd never worked in kids entertainment before. So to be able to really see how that affects kids and the values it was presenting, especially in the era of like Disney Channel shows. There's nothing wrong with Disney Channel shows. They're fine, but like if you watch them and you're an adult and you're like, these kids are little brats, man. They're rude. They talk back. It's all about the jokes. There's not really anything you're learning for like these 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds that are watching the show. But if you're watching Power Rangers, at least you see that they're trying to do good and you're doing better things and they're making healthy choices. And, I don't have kids and I don't want kids, but I have nieces and nephews that I love to death. And like, I liked them watching a show like that and learning how to be a better person. That makes sense. It meant a lot to me. So, so I quickly fell in love with Power Rangers. I remember Brittany Pirtle once asked me, who was Yellow Samurai. She was like, "Do you actually like Power Rangers?" And I'm like, "I don't know if I could work on this brand if I didn't love it, because it is one of those brands that you have to love it to work on it. If you don't like it, like it's not going to work for you." So
Yeah, Power Rangers really did shape my life. I first started watching it when I was like 3 years old, and for an autistic like myself, it just really kind of spoke to my soul, and I've just been really connected with the franchise ever since.
I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. What question do we have next, Sound Out?
Well, speaking of Power Rangers and love for Power Rangers, how about the Power Rangers Battle for the Grid video game, where
Mhm.
you're part of the
Oh,
voice
yeah.
cast?
I was part of the voice cast. That was again, but so by the time we did Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, my job had changed significantly. I started as a coordinator and it was just doing everything. And then by the time Battle for the Grid happened, that was right on the cusp of the Hasbro Saban change. So my job at that point, I had gone from being a TV executive that like and to becoming a Power Rangers executive. And the difference was, and the way the job molded over the years was that because Power Rangers has such extensive lore and mythology, there had to be people that knew the brand and knew the mythology. And just through sheer circumstance, it ended up being mostly me that really our entire department. We had a great team, Paul and Brian, but like when it came to I have a very hyper focused kind of mind because I have ADHD and it works in my favor for the sort of thing where I don't forget things easily when it comes to stories. And so anything that had a story when it came to Power Rangers that was something that was that was for an older audience, like the comic books, like the feature film, like the video games, that all eventually had to like pass to my desk for mythology lore stuff. And so what I was starting to produce was like I had actually the least amount to do with the television show. That was like the least I did the least when it came to that. Had very little to do with the television. I did do work on the television show and I'm very proud of the work I did on it, but I had very like creatively that was my boss's domain. And I did everything. I did the comic books, I did the video games. And so Battle for the Grid happened because we had done this amazing video game with Lionsgate that was for mobile, and it was Legacy Wars, and it's still going on today. Beautiful game, wonderfully done. Worked really hard.
I play that game every night.
Yeah, we worked on the creative for that. Like we really wanted to make sure it was done well for the feature film. And look, it's still going. Yeah, 6 years later, it's insane. But but they wanted to do a fighter video game, and they had everything done, but it's an indie budget, and so it was one of those things where we wanted to do a story mode, but we had to figure out how to do it on a very reduced budget. I brought in that's by that point, Kyle Higgins, who was the writer of the Power Rangers comics at the very beginning, had a really good relationship. We had worked together quite a bit. So we brought him in to write, basically adapt Shattered Grid for this game.
Mhm.
And then it became a matter of like, can we add voices? And initially it was like, no, we can't. We don't have the budget. And then thankfully, Inouye and Lionsgate found the money, and we found a little bit of money for voices. And so then it was a matter of, okay, who has speaking roles? How can we divide that so that the people, we can bring back as many actors as we can, but still like that still had leftover. So we got, Austin, and we got Jason, rest in peace, my buddy.
Mhm.
We got I play game with him almost every night. David Fielding. Those were the 3 OGs that we got back. And then I was really friendly with Megan Camarena because of Hyperforce, and we weren't able to get Amy Jo. Again, she's very busy and she was in a whole other country. But we got in. She had done a fantastic job on Shattered Grid Live, so we got her to do Ranger Slayer and Kimberly. And then we got these 2 incredible voice actors, and I feel so bad that I can't remember their names because they are legends and utterly incredible, to do about 3 different voices for us, and they were fantastic. And then there was still like 3 different voices that we needed, and it was a matter of circumstance. Like, we were in the room, and I was like, screw it, I have been in these rooms long enough. I know how to do this. So I ended up Megaforce Yellow and Cat Ranger. And like, I would have loved to get Ciara. Ciara and I are actually very friendly. She's a lovely person, one of my favorite Rangers of all time. She's just an absolute sweetheart and just gorgeously beautiful.
Yeah, she's incredible.
She's so sweet. But she doesn't have a speaking character in the story. So it was one of those things where like, who can we afford to bring back and actually get the most maximum amount? And so that's how I ended up voicing those 2 characters. And we had another producer, Amanda Cruz, who was with Lionsgate, who did the Mystic Force White. And Kyle really wanted to voice a character, and so he became the MMPR
Mastodon Sentry.
Yeah, the Sentry. And so it was fun. It was literally just guerrilla gaming and voice acting with, honestly, by that point, my friends, because we had to work together for so long. And so it was just a fun experience, and I was happy to be able to do it. It was through pure necessity. I didn't like cast myself because I thought I was the best at it. But it was just one of those things where we just needed a voice, and I was there. And I was cheap. I think they had to pay me. But it was a very small amount. I don't even remember if I cashed a check, to be honest. They had to pay me for like legal reasons, but it was like, I don't know, like $50 or something crazy. I don't remember.
Yeah, when I heard the voice cast for Battle for the Grid for the first time, and I heard SPD Shadow and Magda Defender, I was like, wait, this voice sounds familiar. And then I looked at the credits, it's like, Kyle Bear, Dragon Ball, Kyle Bear.
It's Kyle.
Him.
He's fantastic. We just were lucky. Like because I did Glitter Force, I did Digimon. I had really good relationships with production houses, and that one specifically was Studiopolis with Jamie. And I told Jamie I needed 2 voice actors that were incredible, and he got me Kyle, and he got me, I can't remember. Oh, the other, she was amazing to play Rita, because we needed more than just a Rita. We needed a Rita and we needed a Jen Scotts, and she could do both. And
if I remember correctly, that was the voice of one of the sisters in Kill la Kill.
Probably. She's amazing.
Yeah,
they're incredible.
I just can't remember her name at the moment either.
Studiopolis does a lot of anime dubbing, and so that's who they have in their ranks. And so we were very lucky to have those 2 actors. They were incredible. Her Rita was insane, and so was her Jen Scotts. It was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, those voices were great as well.
Yeah. And we always tried to get the original characters, the original actors when we could, but sometimes you just, decisions. And so that was one of them, but I was happy with who we got. They were incredible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. According to Ranger Wiki, it was Carrie Kiranen.
Carrie Kiranen.
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
It was amazing. Her Rita voice was incredible. Gave me chills.
All right. Well, let's move. We're still in the Saban production side, but I'll pass the question to my co-host here to
All right.
ask the next one.
All right. During your time with both Saban Brands and Hasbro, how was your experience with working with both teams?
Good. Fine. They I mean the teams is such a vague word. I mean, Saban Brands, we were the franchise team and we worked with every other team. But it depended on the team. You know, I worked uh with business affairs a lot, which meant I worked with Jason Bischoff a lot. I worked with Trina a lot, with Edgar Paston, just like all these people in product approvals. I mean, my job was so weird. I don't think there's ever like it's hard to define what kind of job it is, um, because there's not a lot of brands like Power Rangers, and our team was Saban was so small that you had to wear a lot of hats. Which worked well for me because, you know, again, I have ADHD. I don't like getting stuck with one thing. So being able to do a bunch of different things, that was my bag, you know, and I really enjoyed it. And like, technically, I'm not product, I'm franchise. So we had these amazing product approval team, including Edgar and Trina and a bunch of other incredible people that were gracious enough to like allow us to help work on the comic books and work on the video games and all that stuff that technically should be going through them, but like we knew the brand, so we worked and helped with that. Hyperforce was technically a marketing thing. Marketing paid for it, but we produced it. So it was really different at Saban Brands because we were a smaller company. We had been working together for about 10 years. We're very tight knit. We knew what we were doing. Everybody knew. It was a all hands on deck kind of shippy kind of thing. Hasbro was a much bigger company and much more rigid in terms of what their roles are. And so for me, it just was different. You know, you had to make all new relationships with all these people, and there was and unlike Saban, they were very siloed in what they were doing. So it felt kind of like narcissistic to go to like the video game people who were used to just working on the video game by themselves and be like, well, you need me. I need you to tell, you know, that, I mean, it required a different kind of conversation. And thankfully they were all super gracious and super happy to like have the help, but it was just, it just worked a different way. We were the only team, like there's a production team and then there's a franchise team, and they are usually completely separate, and we were the only production development team that actually worked with both. Everybody else on the production side worked, you know, 10, like 5, 6, 7 different shows, different brands. Like they weren't just on Power Rangers like I was. So it was just a completely different experience. But the people were lovely. The Hasbro, I loved the company and what it stood for. They worked really hard for diversity and volunteerism, and as a company, it was lovely. It was just work differently, which happens. It's a much bigger company, and they have their own ways of doing things. So it wasn't a bad experience. It was just different than what I was used to.
All right. Well, on that, what did you have a personal favorite season that you worked on during your time with Power Rangers?
Oh, it's hard. I mean, if you talk about like his favorite cast, Megaforce. I got to know those guys really, really well. And I truly have genuine love for each and every one of them. I love them all to death. My favorite is Cameron. I just freaking love Cameron Givo. And I love John Mark and Azim and Ciara and like Christina and like Andrew. Like I love them all. They're fantastic. I think in terms of creative, probably the first season of Dino Charge. It was just a lot.
Oh, Dino Charge was fantastic.
I freaking love Davi. Davi and Brennan are like two of, and Yoshi, obviously Yoshi is like my buddy. Like they're just I love that cast. But I love Samurai too because it was the first one we did, and again, that cast is amazing. I freaking love Hector. I love Hector to death. They're all my babies. It's hard to say. I just love. It's hard to separate the cast from the content. But content wise, I would say the first season of Dino Charge. I also really loved that first season of Beast Morphers. Again, I freaking love that cast. Jackie is like, oh, I love her to death. So it's hard to say, but like I would say cast wise, like overall experience, even though I know it's a controversial season, I love the Megaforce cast. And Super Megaforce was super fun because we got to use all those different costumes. And that was an anniversary season. That was a lot of fun. And we got to do a lot of cool stuff around that anniversary season. And content wise, I loved the Dino Charge story. I loved Kendall. I loved the whole dinosaur motif.
Oh, yeah.
I loved the caveman and the knight and all that. It was just a fun content, like creatively fun season.
Yeah, I personally can't wait to interview anybody from the Beast Morphers cast. They all seem really very awesome.
They're great. They're all sweethearts. They're fantastic. I don't know them as well as I know the other ones, but for some reason I got to know Jacqueline quite a bit. So they're great.
Yeah, I remember I met Ciara here at there was a convention here in town in a small town. She was one of 3 guests. It took place in a gymnasium inside a community center. And I was like the only person talking to her for like 40 minutes. So we just had this wonderful conversation. And every time I've met a Megaforce cast member, they're always the nicest.
She's great. She actually, yeah, it was so funny because there was one time when I met her. It was actually at it was at the Street Fighter Showdown premiere. And I just couldn't stop hugging her. I hugged her like 4 times, and I remember being like, "This is very awkward and weird. Why can't I stop hugging her?" And I know she thought it too, but she was polite enough to just like give me a hug and laugh and leave me alone.
All right. Well, from that point, I do want to ask a little side question because it's not totally a scripted question, but you mentioned Glitter Force and Digimon during your time at Saban. There was it was kind of interesting because those kind of just sort of came and went. But do you have any kind of like interesting production anecdotes when it came to those series?
It was I mean I liked them. I know like it was a different kind of dubbing as opposed to it was more of the 4Kids kind of dubbing as opposed to the way anime you see now, which is a much more pure, like the script is what it is. You don't change it. You don't do anything. The challenge is, and this is why what I think a lot of people have a hard time understanding, is that when you're creating content for kids, the broadcasting standards for here is very different than it is for Japan. So it required cutting and adapting in order to make these more kid friendly. And for Glitter Force, we purposely went a little more, a little deeper because we wanted this to feel like an American show. And we purposely cast it that way. We had an amazing cast, like Laura Bailey, who's like, you can't like, she was our lead. And Colleen, who was in the latest Sonics movie, she was our glitter Sunny. Like we had an amazing cast. And I remember getting seeing a lot of heat online because fans are like, why didn't you just keep it Purity Cure? Why didn't you just do this and this and that?
Yeah.
But the problem with that is like when you call something Pretty Cure and it doesn't have any context to it, all people think, and we actually tested this, they just think hot nurses. Like kids don't understand what that means, and parents don't like it because pretty is in the name, and this is a different era where you don't want people to focus on people being pretty. That seems a little superficial, right? So like we made changes for reasons. And we didn't have a lot of budget to do it with, So it was I'm really proud of Glitter Force was never meant for the older audience that loved Pretty Cure. Mm-hmm. Because if you loved Pretty Cure, you know how to watch Pretty Cure. You would torrent the crap out of it, right? You would like somebody would make the dubs and you would have your own fan site and watch it. And if what you wanted to watch was Pretty Cure, that's what you were watching. Glitter Force was for kids that didn't know how to do that. Glitter Force was for a Netflix kid that just wanted to watch something fun and then dance with their friends about it afterwards. And so that was the point of Glitter Force. And I still remain very proud of Glitter Force. I still like kids still come up to me and are excited about Glitter Force. And a lot of time it's their gateway to anime. Which
Wow.
makes me really happy because then they go and look at the other anime and enjoy it. And so Digimon Fusion was kind of the same thing. It was one of those we had there was so many things that we could not show. I mean, there was a Digimon Fusion where it was a lady and then three little like demon looking dudes, and like when you put them
Oh, I remember that it was Lilibon with a couple of
together,
Violmonts that became like
yeah,
that became like covers for
there
her
was one on each boob and
breasts and
one
her.
on each crotch.
Yeah.
Ay,
like,
ay, ay.
There and hand paint them all out, and that's what we were dealing with. So yeah, I know there was a little bit of controversy, and I recognize that. And like I think somebody sent me a video about like why were the CGI videos so bad at Glitter Force. I'm like, hey, we did our best, and the kids did not care. The kids were just happy to dance. And I mean, I look at both with a lot of affection. I learned a lot being the EIC on those two shows, and it was nice to do something that wasn't Power Rangers. And Glitter Force continued. I love Glitter Force to death. I love Pretty Cure. It was beautiful, but I was happy with how Glitter Force came out, and everything we did was for a reason, for sure. It was never just because we wanted to hack it to death. There were things like we couldn't do.
I do want to ask. I'm a big Digimon fan, so this is going to be a Digimon specific question. They in Japan, Cross Wars ran 3 seasons, and Digimon Fusion ran 2 seasons. Was the 3rd season not dubbed because of ratings, or was it because I know there's an episode where like an entire school gets taken over by a version of Satan, and they start drawing like pentagrams in the grass. So was it a content or was it a ratings thing?
I don't remember. I think so. Right about that time, things started to get really crazy for me because I had just done Glitter Force. We were doing Glitter Force Doki Doki and Digimon, and there was a bunch of other stuff coming. And by that point, the department had gotten so big that it had actually been split. It had been split into a Power Rangers department and a development and productions department. I was the only executive that was doing both. And on top of that, I also like was in charge of a bunch of other stuff. And I was working, I kid you not, like 80 hours weeks. And it just got too much for me. And so what I ended up having to choose. I ended up having to decide, am I going to be on Power Rangers full time, or am I going to do this other stuff full time? And I ended up choosing Power Rangers. So I don't think I finished Digimon season 2. I think that went to Nathan, who's now a VP at Nickelodeon. He got promoted and he ended up taking over a couple of those shows, including Doki Doki and Digimon, I believe. So that would be a question for him because by that time I had moved over and I was full-time Power Rangers. I became the director of Power Rangers content.
Cool. Well, thank you for that answer, because I'm always kind of wondering like which avenue do I go down to find the answer of what happened to the 3rd season.
Especially sorry for interrupting. Talking about Digimon, it's definitely going to be interesting regarding the newest Digimon series, Ghost Game, because there's a lot in that show. It's like one of the more recent episodes, Zed Millenniumon pilots a corpse.
Yeah. I mean, it really depends on where it airs and who it's for. Broadcast and standards, broadcast TV, Netflix might be a little different, but again, if it's under the 4Kids banner, like even for Glitter Force, there were those beautiful transformation sequences. That's strobe warnings. We couldn't wear it was. So we had to add this like filter on top of it. And I remember we got hammered online for that. But like that was because Netflix made us, because it was for kids and they didn't want to give kids strokes, or epilepsy.
Yeah.
So like
we don't want to repeat the Porygon incident.
Yeah, so it was all like depends on who's it's for, who's creating it, what we're doing. We did Kibao Clashers, which was really fun. It was based off, I think is it a Chinese show or Korean show? I really loved It was about little beetles that like battle each other, and I did that. I did the first season of that, and again, that was really violent. And so we had to, a lot of times we just had to cut the content down. So I don't know what happened with 3rd season. Either honestly, Netflix just decided not to pick it up, or wherever it was, if it was on Nick.
I think Nicktoons had it during season 2.
Just decided not to pick it up. It could be as simple as that.
Okay.
It can be anything.
I think we're ready to transfer over to our comic book section of our questions.
Oh yeah, I cannot wait for the comic stuff because I freaking love the Power Rangers comics.
Oh, thank you.
So much goodwill is done with that stuff. It's not even funny. I was like, it tells so much stuff regarding Power Rangers lore, and I just absolutely love the comics. And I got a whole bunch of them. They're currently on the other side of the house.
Because we're up to issue 105.
Yeah.
This has been going a while. It's an impressive run. So I guess our first question is, how'd you get involved with writing the comics?
So when I left Hasbro, I had thought of doing another job like the one I was doing. By that time, again, I'm ADHD, heavily ADHD, and there was no other job like my job out there. I think the closest would have been like Star Wars, or and the thought of going back and just being a television executive again, or doing that kind of work again, just made me sad. I was done by that point. I was ready to be creative on my own again. I felt by that point I had made the connections to and had convinced enough people that I knew what I was doing, that I could actually make a career as a writer. And so I had talked to my girlfriend and basically said, hey, what do you think about me not looking for another job right now and trying to be a writer? And she's like, I got you. Don't worry about the rent. Try it for 2 years, see if it works. And thankfully I had made really great connections and people were giving me opportunities. And one of those opportunities was Kyle Higgins. I did some work for him in the backups of Radiant Black. He saw that I knew what I was doing, and he asked me to pitch him a series, and that ended up becoming The Dead Lucky. And so I ended up getting The Dead Lucky at Image, which was a big deal, and I'm so grateful for. And I'd stayed close with the Boom team, particularly Daphne. Daphne and I had been through the trenches together for a really long time. We were, friends for 6 years, and like really truly appreciated each other. And she's literally one of the smartest, most passionate women I've ever met in my life. I just love her to death. She's incredible, and an incredible editor who has never ever dropped a deadline. And she just works really freaking hard. And we stayed friends. And so she knew I was writing, and so I sent her The Dead Lucky because I really value her opinion. And she read it and loved it. And it just so happened at that time that they were looking for a Power Rangers writer. And they needed somebody that knew the entire 100-year or 100-issue run history, and that could come in and very quickly pick it up and just move the story forward. And there was very few people who could do that hadn't already been on the book. And so originally we were talking about maybe doing something with another license or just doing something original together. And then she's like, what do you think about writing Power Rangers? And I'm like, if Hasbro will let me do it, like I'm all for it. And thankfully, the publishing team at Hasbro was amazing. And they said yes. So I pitched an arc, and the rest, like they liked it, and I've been able to write ever since. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's like when I was starting to read your run, it was like one of the more recent issues. It was the Stone Canyon Trio and Kimberly going to help the Omegas with something, right. And then I started reading somebody sing, and I was like, wait a minute, and then I started to see a shadow. I was like, no. And then I immediately turned the page for the one shot. I was like, Alpha 1.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I mean, that was really important to me. I feel like I didn't write the first 100 issues of Power Rangers, but I have been on these books for a very long time. I was in the room when Kyle pitched that first series and that first event on Shattered Grid. Like I worked my butt off on those books. So I feel very proprietary about those storylines, and I freaking love them. And obviously Kyle and Ryan and Matt are all dear friends of mine. We're all in the Massiverse together now, and brothers. And so one of the big things that was incredibly, and Marguerite I think is fantastic and an amazing, smart, wonderful woman, and I freaking loved Beyond the Grid. And so one of the things that was really important to me was not to break anything, not to throw anything out, but instead pay homage to those incredible moments that were created in the lore and use them to further enhance the story that I wanted to tell. So so you see a lot of those little tiny callbacks. And I remember asking the guys if there was anything that they felt they wanted me to pick up, and like Ryan asked me for two very specific things, and I still talk to them about it. I still like send them like pictures. I sent them one last night and get their feedback because they're incredible writers, and I'm so thankful that I have them in my corner, and they were all four of them were so supportive of me taking over.
Very nice. But yeah,
It's wonderful.
I'm
It's
just
wonderful
a
to
big
hear.
fan.
I remember there was a reference to Salad Girl, which was like a one-off thing from the Go-Go Power Rangers book.
I love Ryan's work.
I loved it because I had forgotten about the Salad Girl scene, and so I read it in the issue, and I was like, that feels like a callback. And then the deluxe hardcover of Go-Go Power Rangers came out, and I was rereading that, and I was, oh, Salad Girl.
Yeah.
It all ties together nicely.
There was little stuff like that like constantly like gets in my head, and I always wanted to see it picked back up again. I always wanted to see Zach and Trini make a go of it because I loved that relationship with Pink. I've always wanted to see the resolution Salad Girl. I wanted Alpha One to come back. There were things I really wanted that that now I get to do, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of some of the original characters that are made in like the Power Rangers comics, the Massiveverse and such like that. To the point where I want to get like extra figures and customize them into those characters. Like I did this for from Power Rangers Unworthy.
Oh, that's
It's basically Vengex as a Power Ranger.
Yeah. The camera's a little frozen, but I'm sure we'll get it.
Yeah, we'll catch up hopefully in a moment. I do want to ask. So with Radiant Pink, you're co-writing this one.
I am.
And I'm wondering, how is the process different when you're co-writing a book versus, I guess, solo writing a book?
There's a whole nother person there. Luckily, Megan and I are really actually have gotten we've known each other now for 5 years. So like we've gotten and we're truly friends. Like she is like a sister to me. We know each other really, really, really well. Her dog is like my godson. Like I know I'm not his I'm not his godmother. That's somebody else. He's like a son to me, and I love him. And if you see my Instagram, you constantly see him all over there because he's staying with me all the time when Megan does all her influencer stuff. But we were very, very close, and that was actually why we wrote this book together, because Radiant Pink was inspired by her life and the turbulence and chaos of being an influencer and a gamer. And when it came time to writing the miniseries, she didn't want to do it alone. And I was brought on as a co-writer, and it's a different experience for sure. You have to be very open and very collaborative, but thankfully, Megan and I have worked on that relationship for a long time. We did a series called The Unleashed together, which was an RPG series that aired on Twitch that was commissioned by Twitch, and it was basically everything we wanted to do on Hyperforce, just like pushed a little further, and we had a really fun time on that. But through that, we learned how to work together and how to read each other, and by the time we came on to Radiant Pink, I have Dead Lucky. I'd been writing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I know how to write books, and so it's a lot of that looks really cool. I just saw the picture. Very cool. And
Nice.
so most of the time what we do is like Google Docs is a lifesaver. I have another desk back here, and we would usually just sit together and just write out of the same Google Docs, her on that computer and me on this one, and then just talk it out. And thankfully we have worked on enough that we have enough of a rapport that it was actually a relatively easy process. It was really nice. And it's nice to have, honestly, sometimes it's even easier to have a co-writer because, again, I'm ADHD, and sometimes I can stare at it for 10 like hours and maybe get like half a page out. But when you have somebody there, it keeps you focused. And so usually the Radiant Pink stuff we can hammer out in a day or in a day and a half or 2 days if we're together and we're working on it together.
Hmm.
because we're keeping each other motivated and accountable. Deadlines are hard, deadlines.
Yeah.
I've got 2 deadlines tonight
Yeah, they are hard.
on them. So
Here's a question. Just Dead Lucky, Radiant Pink, Boom, Image or Image and Boom, right? Those are 2 different, smaller publishers. But you recently did this, worked on the Women of Marvel one shot. Was the deadline stricter at Marvel than it was otherwise, or are they about the same between them?
believe it or not, it was easier, but it was harder because I wanted to do an America and Kate story, and that meant that I had to read about 200 pages of America and Kate's story to be able to tell an 8-page story. Because I needed to know exactly what was going on with those characters. And then there's a couple other characters that are in there. And so then I had to go and look at those other characters and see what they're doing to make sure they're all true to the story. I think I wrote I said a tweet that 60% of me writing Power Rangers is looking at old stuff and making sure I don't screw up the lore. And I probably will already, but I mean, it's inevitable at this point. There's just too much out there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I had an amazing editor with Marvel. They gave me the opportunity, and it was a really easy process. It was just, the same. It all works the same way. Whether I'm writing for Oni Press or Boom or Image or whoever. Image is different because it's creator owned, and I work with Kyle on that. But with any one of those things, anytime I'm telling a story, whether it's narrative podcasts or the series that I'm interactive series that I'm working on during the day or anything else, you pitch an outline or you pitch a log line. And for Marvel, they just said, do you want to do a one about you want to be in the Women of Marvel anthology? And so I pitched 3 different stories, and they picked one and then gave me some more feedback about it, and then I delivered a script. And it was easy. It's 8 pages, so it was not hard. As opposed to 22 or Power Ranger scripts are probably the hardest because you're balancing so many different characters, and there's so much lore and research that goes into them. It's different than, say, a Radiant Pink, which is just pure chaos and fun, or a Dead Lucky, which I get to create that world. Power Rangers has very rigid rules, and so thankfully I have an incredible editor that helps me stay on track and catch those things, because it's a different. I love being, and if I will stay on those books as long as they let me, but they does require a lot more effort, and it is a harder time to write that book. Marvel was easy compared to that. I just had to read 200 pages.
So speaking of Dead Lucky, this is your created work, your created character. Could you talk about the experience of creating that character and world? You're not working in somebody else's world, but your own. How is that more creatively freeing, or is it more daunting?
I actually spoke to this a while ago. I'm actually better at playing in somebody else's world than I am in creating my own. And I think it's because I wrote a lot of fan fiction when I was a kid. And don't go looking for it. It's terrible. But I got very used to getting a character's voice down and getting a world down if I see it and I know what it is. It is a different experience in my head creating one for myself. And so I actually had a lot of help with that. With Kyle constantly is on me about the rules of the world and making sure that it's set up properly. And he's great at building worlds. And so I had a lot of help with him. But essentially, he had done Radiant Black, which was a massive success, done incredible. And then Ryan had come out with Rogue Sun, and Inferno Girl Red was coming out as a graphic novel, and he was looking for another title. And so he asked me to pitch him a series. And one of the things I've always really wanted to explore, I have a girlfriend who's a veteran, an Army veteran. And one of the biggest conflicts we've had in our relationship when we've been together a long time is the fact that she's a soldier and I'm not, and how her entire world is defined by being a soldier, and how she doesn't get mad for sharing, because she's been very great about being open and vulnerable about this whole thing. But the thing that always really struck me about that was that, she never thought she would live past 30. And then she turned 30 and was like, well, what do I do now? And it was a really interesting thing to see because I saw where she was coming from because she had all these friends that weren't with her anymore. And we were still losing friends. We had lost a friend to suicide a couple of years ago, and then we lost Jason, and so it. I wanted to honor those people. I wanted to honor that experience of a veteran coming home and not being able to really be home, and so I asked Sandra if it was okay if I worked on a series that talked about that veteran's experience in a superhero setting. And she said she was okay with it, and thankfully was very open with it and very vulnerable. And so I took that and I created a narrative, and I created BB. And then what I really wanted was one of my favorite things about Power Rangers was robots. I love mechs. I love Zords. Zords, like the samurai folding Zords, are like my favorite because they were little pets. But I loved the idea of a girl in a mech, and being able to take these ghosts that she carried around with her and recreate a team through robots. And so it just kind of developed from there. And I chose San Francisco because it's very tech oriented, because it's a very diverse city. I'm a queer Latina writer, so I purposely made her bisexual, and I wanted her to be pansexual. So there was a lot of different things that I created purposely for that world. And then it was just a matter of populating it with interesting and different characters and creating a story that we thought people would like. And thankfully, the reception, aside from a couple people that we knew that wasn't going to be for everybody, has been really good, and we're very grateful to be able to tell that story. The first trade is out next week too, and it looks beautiful. Look at it, it's so pretty.
Nice.
It's gorgeous. Looks awesome.
Yeah. So very lucky. First book, like to say that you have a first comic book ever and it's with Image. Like not a lot of people can say that, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity, for the belief that Kyle had in me to be able to even pitch the story and have it go as an ongoing. So,
yeah. And heck, I never thought I would be interviewing people in the industry, and yet here I am.
Exactly.
Yep. And so I think we have one major final question in our list of questions, and I will pass that to my co-host to ask.
All right.
We're going back to Power Rangers.
Okay.
Yeah. So Power Rangers, with its celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, what are your thoughts on the success of the franchise so far, and where do you hope it goes in the future?
I think it's an incredible accomplishment. I am so proud to be a part of it. I think Power Rangers is an incredible franchise that obviously speaks very deeply to a lot of people. For different reasons. I think it's one of the few franchises that is truly for everyone, and I love that about it. I definitely would love, I love that they're doing Once and Always. I think that that's an incredible love letter to the original series that made it, put it on the map. And
the fact that they got Walter and David back is just nothing sort of magical.
Yeah, I mean, I was really happy they got Karen back and Catherine, because those are two of my favorite people in the entire world. It's absolutely lovely, and so I was happy to see them back. And I just recently met Amy Jo for the first time, and she was just lovely as well. So I love that original.
Oh, lucky.
Honestly, I love those cats. Like I love the Power Ranger family. I think they're absolutely fantastic, and I think it's something special that is very unique. Obviously, Dino Fury, which I have nothing to do with, is doing like very well with fans and like really pushing the diversity, which I really love. I would have loved to be able to do it in my time. So the fact that they are is great. What I would love to see them do in the future is, I think there's still a hole in for an older audience that doesn't consume the comic books. I would love and I hope that that's what they're doing with the Jonathan Entwistle cinematic universe, doing something a little older. I think that the TV show is fantastic for the audience that it's for, but I think that older fans would love to sink their teeth into something a little older. Something definitely I failed to do in my time, but would have loved to see happen. And but that's what the comic books are for, and that's what we work really hard. And I'm thankful to be a part of the tapestry in that way.
Yeah,
I know for me personally, my tether to Power Rangers has been the comics over the last few years. It's the older I get, even though I've loved Power Rangers my entire life, I'll still watch it. I found that like there's times of the recent seasons like Dino Fury where I'm like sort of half engaged with the show, but I'm still fully into the comics.
Yeah.
And I think that, to your point, that there should be, sort of Power Rangers has been 30 years old at this point, but a lot of other franchises will have like the kids section of it and then the older audience section of it, and Power Rangers kind of still mostly in the kids section. And just adding to that discussion of the 30 years of Power Rangers, the thing that I want to ask you as someone who's worked on it and is still working on it and has helped cultivate it, you've talked about how the diversity of the shows have been. Is there any point of diversity you feel is still lacking in Power Rangers to this date?
Of course, I feel like we can always do better. I think, one of the things that we really, really pushed for, and I'm so glad it's finally happened, was LGBTQ Rangers. In Hyperforce, we were really happy to finally have a full-bodied Ranger with Jack, played by Paul. Like, there's definitely room always for improvement. In the movie, we had a character on the spectrum. We had Billy on the spectrum, and that was by design. We want. I always want to try and push the envelope for diversity, because the mantra for me has always been Power Rangers is for everybody, and if it is for everybody, then we should represent everybody. And so, it's not always possible every season to include everybody. There's only 5 cast members, right? But like if we try, or 7 sometimes, it gets really big. But like if we try and find other ways to include them, then I'm all for it. I think there's always room for improvement that way. I would love to see more female Red Rangers. I'm glad we're getting one. But I also understand why, people that want more Red Rangers of color. It's not all possible to do everything for everyone, but inclusivity means looking at the world around you, seeing who is in it, and putting that in your stories. And so back in 1992, the big push towards inclusivity was having a African American character and an Asian American character who were in there as heroes, and that was new and different, and really just propelled Power Rangers forward because people felt represented in ways that they weren't represented before. Same with the Pink Ranger being a superhero for women. Nowadays, you have a lot of women superheroes, and we have more diverse heroes of color, but we're still lacking with LGBTQ and disabled and full body range. Like, there's a lot of different people that we could try and represent in Power Rangers, and I'm sure that people are gonna push moving forward in that direction. It just always takes time, because with any brand, money is involved, and international money is involved, and there's a lot of how do I say this? There's a lot of opinions and a lot of factors that go into every decision. It's never just one thing. And every time there is money, that completely changes the game. And at the end of the day, Power Rangers exists to make money for Hasbro. So you have to balance that. You have to balance the fact that, television is kids TV exists to sell toys and to make money, and brands exist to sell toys and make money for the company that owns them. And to do that, you have to manage a certain level of expectation, right? At the same time, you pick and choose those avenues that allow you a little more freedom, and eventually, hopefully, you end up with, like, we did the first LGBTQ Ranger in the comic books. And I remember like it was like how like the first kiss between two women in the comic books was the comic books, like, and then now
Mhm.
we have an LGBT ranger in the television series, and that's fantastic. Like that's the kind of progress I want to see moving forward. You know, it's like if it takes us an inch by inch to get there, I'm happy to do that. It's kids TV. It's always going to be a little different, but
I agree.
I mean, I'm super proud of the diversity that we featured in the movie. We worked really hard on that. We wanted to make sure that that we had a character that was on the spectrum, that Trini was LGBTQ questioning. Like, could we have gone further? Of course. But again,
Hmm.
everything's a battle and everything's a gamble. And so you really have to pick your battles and try your hardest. And that's what I feel like I did on my time there. And I won some battles and I lost some battles, and that's fine. I'm happy to given my little part to that, because I felt really strongly that we could do more for diversity, and I think a lot of people really feel that and really take that to heart.
Hmm.
All right. Well, I think we're about at the end of our time for the evening, and so at this point, you got Dead Lucky's trade paperbacks coming out.
Yeah.
Women of Marvel coming out same day, right?
Same
Mhm.
day, and MMPR 106 coming out
Yep.
same day,
And
which is fantastic. I will say, like, this is like, before I could say if you wanted to read the comic books, you could pick it up at 101 and not be lost. Like, we're getting to the point where you should pay attention. Things are going to get a little
Yeah.
things are going to get a little nuts, and it starts with 106 for sure.
Nice. Cannot
Wonderful.
wait to read it.
Is there any other projects or anything else you want to promote while you are here?
Oh, there's not really much I can talk about. Everything else is under NDAs. Radiant Pink obviously is, I think it's out in April, and I have another anthology short coming out with Oni Press, which I'm really excited about, which is really fun. It's like more of a Twilight Zone horror kind of take of the story, which I'm had a really lot of fun with. Otherwise, no, I can't talk about it. I can't talk about that. Can't talk about that. I can't talk about him. Supermassive. Oh, I can talk about Supermassive. Supermassive is coming out.
Yeah.
Which is basically the big Justice League kind of crossover of the Massiverse. And
Yeah.
Phoebe and Dead Lucky are in that quite a bit. And then then we come back with Dead Lucky in July or June or July. So Supermassive is coming. Check that out. I'm working a day job, which is on an interactive series, and I'm really excited to talk about when I actually can. Hopefully it'll be announced soon. And that will explain like why I have not slept in like a year. But but yeah, otherwise I can't really talk about anything I'm doing. But I'm excited for what's coming, and I'm excited for the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger stuff. Like, people are either gonna really love it or they're gonna hate me forever. And I truly do not know which way it's gonna go. So that is both terrifying and also thrilling. I want to see how many people pick me, and I hope they don't, because I really worked hard and tried to do my best.
All right. Well, I know you're on Twitter. You said you're also on Instagram. If people want to find you and send you praise for your comics, and hopefully not be mean about Mighty Morphin stuff coming up, I'm looking forward to what's coming up in the comics. Never have not been excited to see more Power Rangers comics, but this current run you're doing is great, and I'm looking forward to everything else, and I'm looking forward to the stuff in the Massiverse and all your other secret projects that'll come up in the future.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. It's nice to meet you, and nice to talk to you guys.
No problem.
Right, well, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.